So I heard some interesting news the other day. I heard that Mickey Mouse's wife is pregnant and he had to get her a new car. You know what kind of car he got her? A minivan. Yep. Now think about it. Tara might have used that joke last week.
Where they have many kids or a lot of kids.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Mickey must be out of the field at this point, so. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to Wednesday on the Daily Huddle. Excited to see all of you here today and excited about our guest, a very special guest today who's going to help us answer the question, how can managing your mind lead to success? So very excited about that. But before we dive in, on Wednesdays, we talk everything relationships and communications because Tara, who's not here today, my dear friend and co-host, believe that relationships build better businesses, better communities, better friendships, better families, and communication is such a big part of that. So to get started, I've got a few questions I would like to ask Sorrel. Sorrel,
Good
what
morning.
is it?
Did you say what time it is?
I did.
Let's see. I've got this fancy Apple Watch that's been stuck on one time. Now.
I love it.
Now.
That's right. Time is now. Thank you. And I'm going to go to Chase. Chase, good morning.
Grand Rising.
Where are you and what are you grateful for today?
I am literally right here in the present moment. And I am grateful today for my mother.
Oh, that's beautiful. That makes me grateful for my mother. Thank you, Chase.
You're welcome.
All right. And finally, I'm going to ask Mary Rose Campbell, because we're so excited to see you. How are you and who are you going to hug today?
Oh, let's see. I am fabulous. I am retired and I am joyful. And I am going to hug my puppy dog today.
Oh, that's great. And we are the way we say we are. And I love joyful. And I don't know, retired sounds amazing too. So glad to see you. Thank you. Okay, I am going to introduce Tom Montgomery. And Tom is a very dear friend and actually my boyfriend, but he is a dear friend of the Huddle. I love him dearly. He has so much good insight. And he's also a colonel in the Marine Corps and the reserves. On his day job, he works at Wells Fargo as a banker. So he's got lots of things going on. But the thing that when we started talking about this, the thing that strikes me as one of his greatest qualities, I think is what I would say it is his ability to navigate challenging situations, his ability to manage his mind, and his ability to do what we ask in the beginning of the Daily Huddle is to decide how he's going to be and then be that way. And so wanted to invite him in to talk about how managing your mind can lead to success. One, because he's had so much success. And two, because I think he's really good at it. So Tom, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's dive in. How can managing your mind lead to success?
Well, manage your mind. You can unlock potential, overcome stress, overcome fear-induced limitations. And the whole premise is that, to a meaningful degree, you can make a choice when a situation becomes challenging as to, how are you going to be, with your mind in particular. And then the choice of mindset can be such a big determinant as to success.
Tell us a time when that's been true for you, like a very specific, deciding point, perhaps, where you've had to make that choice. It was a clear choice.
Sure, yeah, and so, this can apply to, business relationships, you can be a civic leader, or even as I've seen on the military side, no matter how challenging the situation, this basic premise of choosing your mindset and then leading to success. So I can think back to 2006. I spent most of that year in the country of Iraq, so 7 months leading a reserve tank platoon, so 16 Marines for tanks. By early 06, we'd been at war in Iraq for about 3 years, and in Afghanistan a little bit longer than that. So it was a big strain on the military. And so the reserve kept getting tapped more and more. And so I followed the casualty list. I had been on active duty for years prior to that. So I knew a lot of those people. And so several of us then volunteered to go in 06, just simply because we knew the need was so great. And 06 was a very dangerous year. And over the course of those 7 months, the environment kept getting worse and worse, more and more intense. The mission pace kept getting greater. And August 3rd of 2006 in particular, that was a very significant inflection point. That was our 99th combat mission. And combat missions for us, it was a tank unit. We could lead a convoy, we could participate in a raid, or when somebody was in distress, we could come to their aid. And so this particular day on August 3rd, that early morning mission, we were tasked to keep open, keep safe this stretch of road between two towns. And that road was the lifeline of supply between those two very important towns. And so we rolled out, and about 30 minutes in that mission, my wing tank was out in front of my tank, and there was a large blast. And the wing tank commander, Sergeant Giorgio, was exposed in the hatch, and he caught shrapnel and collapsed back into the vehicle. And so then for me in that moment, as we had done in so many other instances, you're in the zone. And so you're working multiple radio communications, recognizing we saw other mines implanted around there. So other danger there. There were bystanders that we wanted to keep safe and away. And then to work the evacuation of George, so we had the best chance to be resuscitated. So once we got George out of there, then I had to escort that damaged tank back to friendly lines. And so in the whole time, just staying in the zone, just right there in the moment, coming back across friendly lines. And as we always did, I would dismount and go do a quick debrief with the leadership. What did we learn? What kind of intel could I share? So everybody else could get the benefit of that knowledge. And I got pulled aside by two of the senior guys who knew the Marines well and knew me well. And they knew exactly what was going on because they listened to all the radio transmissions. And so they pulled me aside. And then for me, then I was out of the zone. And the outpouring of emotion was very immense. But it was only a few minutes. And then I shifted. And even though we'd been in country for a few months, I shifted and then I became so much more aware of, what would the effect be on the Marines, that tank crew in particular in that vehicle. What would they need? And aboard the base, there were resources around, and I knew of them, but I didn't really, access them before. But I immediately tapped those, got the Marines the care they needed. And then through that level of internal focus, they rallied, we rallied. And then we started to apply that same level of care outward.
Well, and I want to stop you for just a minute and slow down a bit, because I know this story, the details of this story, and we don't have time to go into all of the details, and lots of them probably aren't necessary. But George died. George did not make it. Is that so? Right. So you're saying that you got back, and you've described you're very focused and in the zone, and you get back, and you didn't want them to tell you this, and you came down and you lost it. You started crying. You just had this huge outpouring of emotion. And so now what you're describing, and I can almost feel you trying to stay away from the emotion of it, which I totally get. It's because I almost started crying when I heard you just start telling this. But what you're describing is being in a situation where you have to keep it together, and then you come back and somebody that you really care for has gone through something, and now all of these people are really affected by it.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about how do you get back into this and how do you deal with this, and starting to think not only about yourself, but like, how do you care for the other people?
Yeah, and as big of a challenge, actually bigger challenge was the missions didn't stop. And so, as the leader, I had to figure out like, well, how are we going to get through this? And so then that shifting of approach, that becoming open to offers of assistance, and then seeing, resources that the Marines could benefit from, that more open-mindedness and that humility to accept. I wouldn't have accepted that previously, but that day, that was the first casualty that we had within the platoon. So someone I was directly responsible for. So it had a really jarring effect. But once I got through, that immediate, in the zone, out of the zone release of emotion, then it was consciously deciding, what are we going to do? Where's my mind going to be with this?
Yeah. And, this is, as we're talking about it, it is such a heavy topic, right? Because, and I've watched you also. So I know a lot about what you did in that and in those days, following weeks and months. And I want to ask a couple more questions about that. And then I want to talk about what you did later, and even the years later, and taking this and how you've applied some of this. But how did you, because you described that also, like everything had to keep moving, nothing could stop. And so, the missions kept going. Like, how do you go from that moment of knowing that you've got to process something and then shifting and getting back into a space? Because I feel like you've got to process it. Like, you've got to deal with this. You can't just be like shut down, done, over. So, how do you do that?
So, and it's not a single way that you do it. There's a recognition of having to process right then, and then to continue to reflect and process even after we got home. So then for me as the leader, becoming that much more in tune as to how the Marines were doing and what they would need, because I was feeling it too. And so there were mental health resources aboard that base. And for me as the leader, just going and getting those people immediately, to our team,
Mm-hmm.
and then impressing upon the Marines the need to express and to open up, to have some of that processing. That was really, really helpful. But then, as we were processing this, and then the coming together, this more outward focus, this nurturing that we were trying, that I was trying to do, it built this really special, positive, perpetuating benefit, not just within the platoon, but then I began to see opportunities for how we could help other people, outside of maybe what we were tasked to do, maybe even in some ways that maybe I technically wasn't supposed to do, but I knew we could do it safely and we could help people. And then the appreciation that we began to receive, it was immense. And it was humbling, it was gratifying. And then by the end of that deployment, we went from the reserve platoon, the part-time folks who were derided by the active duty guys, is you really know what you're doing? We established ourselves pretty quickly as equals, but then by the end, the company commander pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Tom, I got to tell you, I'm incredibly grateful for you all. You volunteered and you were our strongest platoon. And we couldn't have done this without you."
Wow. And you're naming so many things that we talk about so often, which are stepping outside of yourself, just keeps resonating for me. It's the one thing you keep saying, like, I focused on other people. How could I help other people? And I remember this is on a much smaller scale, obviously, but when I would be going through depression or difficult times when I was younger, I would call my mom and, try and complain to her. And she would say, "You need to get out and do something for somebody else." And she was,
yeah, that really sustained me. It was trying to care for myself, but I got so inspired by caring for the platoon and seeing us as a group come together, and then to get that feedback from others around us as to what we were doing to contribute and to help. It was, yeah, it was amazing.
Which is another thing that we often talk about, which is appreciation, you know, like how giving that appreciation to other people and then also receiving it. Because so often we just kind of like, oh, thanks, but you're saying that actually you let that sink in.
Yeah.
That kept you going.
And I didn't do this intentionally, but early in the deployment, I wasn't open to that. I was much more head down. This is what we're doing. But to really open your awareness and to see opportunities, for how to help internally, but then, how to help others and then to receive that and what that does to then, continue to build, on the momentum.
Right. And then have that gratitude in the same, to be able to receive that gratitude, I can almost see the emotion on your face in this moment, just remembering what that was like to feel that.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about, you've done a lot of studying on this since about mindset and how do you do this? So this isn't something you like came naturally by, I'm assuming, you've worked on it.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, about what you've learned.
Sure. Yeah. Some of my follow-on schooling as I, stayed in the service and got a little more senior. One cool thing that the military has done the last couple of days is it is gotten that much more dialed into universities, specialists, mental health, leadership, business side as well. And then one of these schools I went to, there's a woman named Carol Dweck. She wrote a book called Mindset, and we studied this book. Coincidentally, she published this book in 2006, so during that deployment. But years later, when I was in school, we studied this. And what she did, she profiled dozens of business, civic, sports leaders to try to understand in points of challenge and stressful situations, how are they responding? And what she learned over time is people gravitate to one or two directions. They either go what she calls a fixed mindset or they go growth mindset. Fixed mindset is, let me get near-term focused. I'm going to go internal. If it doesn't go well, I'm going to blame others. I'm going to have this inflated sense of ego. It's a zero-sum environment. But for the ones that are really successful, they approach it so differently. They have a level of humility, but also a confidence that the team is going to be successful. And they create a nurturing environment, where they're tapping into others and they're accepting of, mistakes along the way. It's because it's going to be okay. We're going to learn from this. And over time, we're going to achieve more than what we had thought possible at the beginning. And it all goes back to choosing to have the mindset at the point of when it became stressful. So through studying, mindset, the book in particular, I look back to 2006. I'm like, well, I didn't know the book, but I did make that conscious choice. And I often ask myself, well, why did I do that? How did I do that? Well, when I think in hindsight, there were enough role models around me that I had seen and I gravitated toward them, and they had growth mindsets. But it was just really neat to understand and get that much more clear on you can choose. Yeah, you get through that immediate moment, and then you're at a point where you can actually reflect and choose. And then having the right mindset and what that does to tie to success.
I love what you're saying. And it feels like it's not one or the other. It's all these components, like we were talking about earlier, like you have to process emotion. You have to process whatever is going on, going through you at some point, make space for that. And similarly, and then to step out of yourself to help others. And then to also make space to process the appreciation, the gratitude that you can receive from that or that you receive from that. And then the idea that you can choose and that we are choosing every moment.
Yep.
But I think we've all been there, or at least we know people with this, what I love the way you describe it, the zero-sum game of being completely self-focused and like, just it's all right here. Can't look up, can't look out. And then the growth mindset where it's flexible. It's not a linear path. There's all kinds of options. We're just going to learn from it. And so I want to open it up to questions in just a sec, but how do you make that choice? That's hard. Like, how do you in the moment
Yeah. And for me, the shifting off of my old patterns, it was aided by August 3rd, a very jolting, very humbling experience. So that shifted me off of, I might have defaulted to some of those old ways of, head down and just thinking, hey, we can do this ourselves.
Mhm.
And you don't always need an extreme situation like that, but oftentimes, there can be some kind of external catalyst that causes you to step back.
Mhm.
And so that catalyst, can be a less stressful, but still a challenging environment. But I think if we have the awareness, just always remembering, hey, I have a choice here.
Mhm.
It reminds me of, we talk about, say, resiliency, and there's a lot of similarity between, being resilient in challenging situations. I've always understood resiliency. There's 4 basic elements, right? You focus on your nutrition, getting a proper amount of rest, exercise, and the 4th element is remembering you can choose. And if you choose the right way, you are improving your own resiliency to deal in a challenging situation. And on the military side, we actually had Johns Hopkins mental health professionals come in and talk to us. Again, the military, being finally, open enough to say, hey, there's others who know this better than we do. Let's tap into it. And so, yeah, to come in and to listen and to hear this, and you go, oh my gosh, wow, how insightful.
Well, I love what you're saying, that it can be a catalyst like that. It's a big event, something really impactful that can have you do that. And it doesn't have to be that way. Just the awareness, again, to quote my brilliant mother, she would always say, awareness is half the battle. And if you can have that awareness, and then you can make the choice. So I love that. So let's open it up to questions. Thanks, Tom, for sharing and being so vulnerable. Mary Rose.
Tom, thank you so much for your insight and your sharing. So I'm a social worker, and one of the things I, of course, know a lot about, or know some about, is PTSD, and that the Marines are actually maybe doing some work in the field as it happens makes an incredible difference in the after effects of PTSD. And I am blown away how fabulous this is. I just absolutely am blown away, having numerous family members who are in the military. My ex-husband was in the military, and although he wasn't, there were some issues that he had PTSD from that I was not really aware of, going through some of that. So I just really acknowledge you, and I'm so grateful that that's being kind of brought to the forefront and handled more quickly. So the impact that it makes on families to be able to handle those things as quickly as you can is enormous.
Sure.
So
Yes. Yeah. And I tell you, Mary, and I appreciate you saying that. The military learned a lot, especially from the Vietnam era, where we would have individuals join a unit overseas, do their year of service, and come home individually. And no matter what you went through, within 3 days of leaving Vietnam, you're home, you're on the street. Crazy. No thought, like, how do we help these people? And so one of the biggest changes, by 2003, 2004, was recognizing down at the smaller unit level, we need trained psychiatric board certified professionals who were there locally. And that was another resource that I couldn't access that person same day, but within a few days, having that officer come over and impress upon the Marines, you need to talk about this. You need to start this processing much more than what we've already done in these few days. And then the following up as we're leaving country. And then after you get home, because it is a journey to get through that traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Let me also add here. So I am a child of the 60s. So I was very much, there were friends of mine, people who went to high school with me who died in Vietnam. That whole impact was just tremendous. And so I saw a lot of that, but also the guys that came back from Vietnam, they not only came back alone, but they came back to a climate where they were not acknowledged.
Yeah.
for the contribution that they'd made. And so the impact of PTSD was atrocious, such that the largest Vietnam Veterans Association in the world was in a prison in Michigan.
Wow.
So yeah, we incarcerated them. So thank you so much for all that's it's happening. It's
Wow.
dealing with lots of social issues. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mary.
Sorrel.
Tom, you always do this to me. First of all, I want to say thank you for serving in the military. You know, the things that you and members of your platoon and others in the military go through, I don't have a clue. And I want to seize this opportunity on behalf of all of us to honor you and honor your colleagues in the military. And I have a question. You talked about the mission that you were on. And I'm wondering, was there a point in time when the mission itself became for you an avenue through which you get to fulfill yet another mission that I'm sensing is very important to you? That of caring for another human being. Was there a switch at some point? It's like, I'm eager to go on this mission. It's war, people are, but and I see this mission as access to fulfilling yet another mission. Was there a switch for you?
Yeah, you know, it's a very insightful observation and question you have, Sorrel, because I think up until August 3rd, you know, I viewed missions in a very strict sense. You're tasked to do this. Okay, how do we do it safely? How do we, you know, accomplish what is intended? But after that point, in becoming much more aware and open, and frankly, even a confidence level, where there were a number of times where I technically wasn't supposed to do something, but I became aware of a need. And the running joke in the back of my head is, you know what, if I get in trouble, what are they going to do? They're going to cut my hair and send me to the desert, you know, where people are going to shoot at me. Oh, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing now. So, but to your point, that kind of inspiration really got a hold of me. And the platoon felt that as well. It wasn't me just saying, hey, we're going to do this. I had full buy-in. And so, you know, what we could do, and the tank community in the Marine Corps is really small. And so there's a lot asked of us. There's a lot we can do. And so when you appreciate that, especially that environment, go, oh my gosh, there were so many times like, hey, that's actually outside of our boundary, but I just heard it on the radio. They got hit, wounded. I know what they're going through. The last thing they need to do is worry about getting hit on the way to the surgery center. They've got an hour, you know, in the golden hour to save that Marine. So we're going over there, and I'm going to tell them we're going to escort them, because that's what we can do to help them. That's one less thing that leader has to worry about. We will get you there safely. You focus on that Marine, care for him, and get him in that surgery center.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Sorrel. Time for one more, Rashida.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Tom, thank you so much for your service. It's ironic that you is talking about and also presenting your book. I definitely going to purchase your book. Yesterday, my son was coming. My son is in the Air Force. Is in the reserve, and is transitioning to full time. And it's funny because in his commander said, we never see something like this. They always come from full time to reserve, but not to reserve to full time. But he was coming from the Air Force base, from Maguire Air Force Base yesterday. And he said, Mom, I send you a house. I send you a house because he's been talking, he's 25 years old. He's been speaking about this when he came into the reserve, that he wanted to house and also help veterans. And yesterday he sent me a beautiful 12-bedroom, 9-bathroom house. He said, I'm going to go and get that place. I said, why? He said, remember we talk about going and serving and helping veterans? So he said, and this is the place. He find this place. We're going to look at this place tomorrow. And he is so eager to go into saving. He said, Mommy, we need help. And I know what kind of help I can give them. I said, go for it. He said, you helping me? I said, yes, I'm going to go. So when you saying that, it just really gives me so much drive to continue this mission that this 25-year-old Air Force young mind want to do. So Tom, I'm going to keep in touch with you. I'm going to really need some good feedback with you and giving us some enrichment of continue the mission that my son is embarked upon. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you, Rashida.
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
love it. I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Rashida. And thank you, Tom. Thank you so much for bringing your full self today and for sharing all of this with us. And I'm going to close us out with our 7 tenets. And I just always, after every one of these, I'm always like, I'm going to start with love, but truly, you know, the way you love and the way you care for other people. Let's do that. Let's take that into the world. So love, let's relax and stress less so that we can love and we can laugh out loud and enjoy all of those around us. It's really about people. It's about relationships. Eat mostly plants so your body will thank you. That'll allow you to sleep more so you can be rested and relax more. Give of your spirit, give of your time, your care, just like Tom described. And last but not least, move that body. Thanks everybody for being here today. Thank you again, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you,
That body. We'll see you all tomorrow on the Daily Huddle, next week. Have a great one.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, guys. One love. One love.
Thank you.
One love.